Today I'm going to show you how I did this brushing effect on this aluminum pickguard and the jig that I built to help me do it. But first, let me show you what might be the sexiest guitar ever. Okay, that's pretty bold, but I'm pretty happy with this guitar. We are looking at what I call Barbie blue sparkle finish right there with a holographic effect in the sparkle. And this handmade aluminum pickguard brush that I will be having anodized, the special Maximum Guitar Works BTS nickel-plated knobs with optional white bands, the Super V Maverick telly-looking Strat-like performance with tremolo, brass barrel saddles in a configuration of a telly Strat pickup configuration from Rio Grande, the Dirty Harry series, with my kind of signature boost, MOSFET 30 decibel boost with LED indicator light next to that, ebony fretboard with synthetic opal matching inlays, stainless steel frets, matching headstock, hipshot nickel-plated tuners, Bobinga neck with a proprietary oil blend and wax treatment, super smooth, super slick. I will tell you at the time of this filming, this guitar is not sold. I'm making this guitar as one of the demonstration builds in the class I teach at the local community college. And it's beautiful, it's spectacular, and it's not quite finished. That's why it doesn't have strings on it yet, but it will be sold. So let me know if anybody is interested. All right, so here's the backstory. I had a customer contact me, ask me to make them a pickguard for their Reverend Descent baritone guitar, and they wanted it black brushed aluminum. Obviously the black comes from anodizing. The brushing comes from a mechanical method to create totally parallel scratches in a certain way that is aesthetically very pleasing. Okay, I've used aluminum pickguards before on some of my builds, and often what I do is I just use the random orbital sander and I sand out all the superficial scratches that naturally happen when you're machining aluminum, and then I spray a clear coat, sometimes with like a pearl treatment to it to make it a little iridescent, and it's really cool and I like it. But specifically I was asked about brushed aluminum, so I thought, okay, how do I do that well? Okay, I mean, I can take sandpaper, I can run it up and down, and I can make scratches in it. Making scratches is easy. The hard part is making them perfectly parallel to each other and perfectly vertical in relation to the axis of the pickguard itself. If you want to see how I make an aluminum pickguard without a CNC, without a CNC router, without a CNC water jet or anything like that, and make it by hand, then I will show you if enough people want to see that. If you think it would be valuable, I'll add it on my list of things, and as time permits, I'll show you how I go about doing that. Now, I say no CNC, and I'm not really lying, but maybe I am. I did make the template for this guitar and the template for the other pickguard that I'm making. I did make them using CNC laser technology, just because I like how it just creates perfect templates. And a good template goes a long way to making a good product. In the case of my customer, basically this was the stock pickguard that came off there. So what I did with that is I basically mapped out those dimensions and I made a pickguard template to the exact specifications right there. And while I was waiting for a shipment of aluminum to come in, I kind of played around with some carbon fiber, and there's the exact thing, carbon fiber, with a top coat of finish, actually 2 coats, sanding up to about 800 grit and buffing it out, medium and fine, super high gloss, incredible beauty in this carbon fiber. Okay, but that's not what the customer wanted. I did that just for fun. They wanted aluminum, so I made, with the template, I made this aluminum one. All right, and this is what is going to be his. Now, these will be anodized, okay? The guitar that you see here is Nelly, more specifically, Nelly TSS, okay, for the Tele Strat pickup combination. All right, and this pickguard will also be anodized to a clear anodizing process to basically toughen it up, make it harder, but keep the look of the aluminum, keep the look of the vertical brushing marks going through it. Okay, but it will be anodized, and that's why this guitar is not finished yet, because I've got to take all the electronics out, get that done, and then reassemble, wire everything back up, and do the final tweaks to it. So maybe in a couple weeks, this guitar will be done. In general, let's talk about the types of aluminum. If you go onto any website, I like to do research on metalsonline.com. I purchase a lot of the aluminum there, but they have good write-ups on what the aluminum type is and what are the characteristics of it. So I made 2 out of some of the most commonly used aluminum, okay, for aerospace, for architectural and design and things like that, and that is 6061 and 7075, those 2. And I'm just comparing them as I machine them. I find that they both machine and cut very well. But the 775 seems to be a little bit better in the machining properties, especially when I'm cutting them out with a router by hand with a template. Seems to produce chips a little better. I believe the 775 is a touch heavier, but not significantly, and both are very corrosion resistant and have excellent strength to weight ratios. So both are really good choices when working with aluminum. Now let's look at the jig that I made. It's based on Baltic birch. So here's a base. I've got 2 pieces of 3/4 inch Baltic birch that are glued together, and I've got a 1 inch ledge on the side of this. Now I put also 1 inch around the front and the back for clamping purposes, but I really almost didn't need to do that because these table clamps do an excellent job of holding it, so I didn't need clamps to be located on top of that ledge. But it's certainly an option to use just regular table clamps that kind of come down from the top, and it should be fine. Anyway, then I built this sled, and the idea with the sled is it perfectly rides on these grooves, and it slides back and forth with absolute precision. It can't move side to side at all. I mean, it is perfect, and yet it slides so smooth and easy, mainly because of the construction. All right, I used 2 layers of Baltic birch here, the top layer being just a little bit shorter than the bottom layer, so that I can use these hold down plates on both sides there for the sandpaper that I'm going to use as my abrasive to create the brushed effect. All right, and then on the sides I used a material called HDPE. HDPE, a very common product used for everything from cutting boards to a lot of machined parts and things like that. And it stands for high density polyethylene. Well, the nice thing about that is it's impervious to glue. There's nothing that will stick to it, and it slides really nice. And once this thing breaks in, it's just going to even slide better than it does. So it's a really nice natural lubricant in order to create something with a sliding mechanism without having to use roller bearings and things like that. Now, I will tell you that I put a clear coat finish on all of these parts, and mainly because when you work with aluminum, sanding the brush marks into aluminum, you create a lot of black dust that is just nasty and gritty, and I didn't want it to soak into the wood fibers, so therefore I sealed everything off, and I can take a little bit of naphtha or acetone and I can wipe this down and clean it up when it's done, and it looks as good as new. This sled is 6 inches wide, and it's the span that is wide enough to cover this. Now this ended up being about 14 inches wide on the top piece, so that's what it has to span, and only because the widest pickguard I think I would ever make is about maybe the same width of a guitar, and it's not going to be any more than maybe 12 inches, probably a lot less in most cases, and therefore this jig should fit pretty much any pickguard material or cover plates that I might want to make and give that same effect to. So the handle just gives me an ability to hold on and to slide it back and forth, and it's a little bit more positive grip. Now let's talk about the sandpaper. So I've done some experimentation, and the grit that I've settled on for the look that I'm going for is 120 grit. And it's recommended that you use wet-dry style of paper and that you lubricate the surface of the aluminum so that the abrasives can work without kind of bogging down prematurely and causing any issues. WD-40 is a common lubricant used for this purpose, but I've got my own secret recipe here that I just don't want to divulge. Oh, wait a minute, it's written right on there. 2 parts of mineral spirits to 1 part of mineral oil. I find that provides a very positive lubricant, but doesn't cause the kind of petroleum, kind of stickiness or gooiness, yuckiness or whatever of WD-40. So this is what I use as the lubricant. When we talk about sandpaper, I've tried different types of sandpaper, but right now, until I find something better, this is my favorite right here. This is called Diablo paper. I guess that's a spin-off of Freud. All the router bits, Diablo router bits and blades and things like that. But they make sandpaper that I found locally. And what's nice about it, it's wet dry and it's got this mesh fiber and it claims to be washable. So that, when it gets all dirty, you just take it to the sink and you scrub it out and soak it or whatever and clean it out, let it dry, and it's as good as new. So until the grit wears out, I assume that is. So far, I'm actually approving of this. So this is what we do. I've got these brackets that allow the sandpaper to just slide up underneath. And the first edge, I basically center, and I make it flush with the top, and I simply tighten down all of these fasteners. I probably only needed a left and right, but I decided to do a center one just because it feels more secure to me, but probably not necessary. All right, so they're nice and snug. Now I can go to the other side and wedge that sandpaper under that side. And the cool thing about this side is with the 6-inch width by 2 thicknesses of 3/4 inch Baltic birch, it leaves about a 1/2 inch extra on that sandpaper. So I can pull that up nice and snug. And the other great thing about this mesh is it's not prone to tear like paper would. So I can hold it up into place and then tighten her down. And I have got now sandpaper that is very snug. If the sandpaper was loose and bunching up, it's not going to give you the proper performance. But this now is so taut under here that I get very consistent results out of using this to create my brush strokes. It doesn't take a whole lot of tape, but I want to put enough to keep the pickguard level. Now I will mention that in prepping this aluminum, I did take it to the orbital sander still, because that just helps clean up any of those deep scratches that happen during the machining process. You just can't avoid them. It's just aluminum is just too soft, and you'd look at it wrong, it's going to scratch. So that's not good. That's where anodizing comes in. Now I'm going to lay this on here. Maybe it'd be good if I put little grid pattern or something like that, but I can see visually when it looks like it's pretty straight. And I just lock that down. We'll use our special formula right here that nobody knows about. And we'll spray a little bit of that on. We'll lay this on top. Now I do have the sides to be adjustable, so it's not going to rock back and forth if I loosen these guys and let the sides drop all the way down to support the weight, and I only want enough of the weight on there to allow the sandpaper to do its job. And then we just start moving back and forth. There is nothing else you can do but move in this vertical pattern because it doesn't let you go any other direction. If you see it's making maybe more scratches on one side than the other side, maybe flip this around and just try. Maybe you got older sandpaper on one side than the other. I've seen videos talking about only move in one direction. I found that to be not really important. As long as you are going perfectly straight, it doesn't matter if you're moving just forwards or forwards and backwards. Now the 120 grit really gets some nice grooves in there. Don't want to overdo it, but it really does a nice job. Let's kind of wipe off all this extra special juice here and see what we got. That's looking good. I'm going to stop right then. You know, one of the most important lessons that I've learned in guitar making is know when to stop. I ignore that advice so often, and most of the time it leads me to a point where I have to do something over again because I wanted just to get it a little bit better. Know when to stop. All right, and I'm going to stop right there. I'll give you a close-up. Again, it's not anodized yet, and it needs a better cleaning process, but look at the brushing. Look how perfectly vertical and parallel they are to each other. And tell me that this jig is not awesome. The hardest part I find is actually getting the double stick tape to release. Sometimes the oil gets in there and loosens up the tape a little bit, and that's fine. But double stick tape, also, I've mentioned this before, is known as pressure sensitive adhesive. Actually bonds harder and tighter with pressure, and by applying that downward force as I am putting the brush marks in, it actually creates a pretty strong bond between that that board and the pickguard itself, and they just don't want to separate. A little perseverance and we've got a product that is ready for anodizing. Now they'll go through a full cleaning process, so I don't have to worry about this. In fact, this is the last bit of machining I will do in this pickguard just to preserve it from getting any scratches. I'll slide this into like a plastic bag of sorts by itself, not coupled with anything else, to protect it for the anodizing process. What you see is basically what you're going to get. So the better you have it here, the better it'll be at the end. I know what you're asking yourself. It worked great for that little tiny pickguard, but what does it do for something that's a little bit larger size? And I think you'll agree, this Tele Deluxe-esque pickguard is probably close to the largest that you'll see commonly out there. So I will show you. I put some tape on there. I did wipe this down with naphtha to try to get off those oils so that the old Nelly TSS pickguard will stick firmly to it. We've got a little residue built up here. I could go and I could wash it off, but I think I've got one more pickguard left in me, and then we'll clean up the sandpaper for the next use later. But let's get it going. The pickguard blank material is the same height, so I don't have to readjust the side guides, and I am ready to go. You just watch this all day, huh? Just for the sake of uniformity, I will flip it around and do a few final strokes. All right, that's real time. 30 seconds, a minute, I don't know. You keep track of it, but certainly not long. Okay, we'll bring a close-up again. And if you want to keep making the scratches deeper, you could go with a lower grit, or you could just keep on machining back and forth and get it where you want. But isn't that just beautiful? So that is the aluminum brushing Maximum Guitar Works jig in action. 2 pickguards live right in front of you. And if you want to be the one to say, "Oh, Nelly," keep an eye out for this when it comes up for sale. Until next time, remember, no matter what you do, start with excellence.